Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I can hear you. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hi, Rob.
Bob.
Hey, everybody.
Hi to everybody else as well. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve. Is Rob Word on yet? I don't think so. Well, he'll get here soon enough. And I see Dottie's on, I see Orla's on. So it is 7 p.m. I'm sure Rob Words will join us in a few. It's 7 p.m., so we'll call this meeting to order. And so the record will show that at least at the beginning of this meeting, it was 5 of us, with the exception of Rob Words. And Dottie, if you can just keep track of when he comes in, then you can list him as present for the meeting in the minutes when he comes in. So that's call to order and roll call. Second item is correspondence. We've got tax collector Rini Moore, an overview of the firefighter rebate program and data specific to each department and volunteer. I know I received something from Ken Beausoleil today. Was it today or yesterday? It was recently. No, it was today. You get so many emails in a day, you don't remember which day it came in. I saw the email from Ken Beausoleil. I'm assuming the rest of you got it. Yeah, it looks like you were all copied on it. And I'm not aware of anything else that's come in for correspondence since last week. Is anybody else aware of anything?
We did get stuff from the fire marshal and the fire departments, I believe.
Okay.
Orla had sent over.
I think we got that before last meeting.
Oh, was it?
I believe so.
I did send the budgets earlier on this morning, the fire department's budgets. I resent them, and also I sent the additional email with some other documentation. They were both sent today.
Yes.
Rob Word just joined. Sorry,
Thanks, Rob.
sorry it's late. Good evening, everyone.
Good
No
evening.
worries. Dottie, if you can add Rob Words as being present, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other correspondence that we're missing here? All right, we'll move into citizens' comments. If there's any citizen who has a comment, feel free to let us know. It's budget season, so we do our 3 minutes per person maximum. Any citizen who has a comment at this time? Any citizen who has a comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to budget workshop. I believe we left off with page 52 and 53, which is parks. At least that's where my yellow sticky note is. I think we had just finished Public Works.
Yep.
We were talking about Oreos, if I recall.
We were. Absolutely. Good memory, Steve. So if everybody's memory is consistent with mine, then we pick up with parks, page 52 and 53. Looks like there's not much going on there in terms of changes from last year. Does anyone have any questions or comments on parks?
Did we actually spend it this past year? I thought that was something that was passed over to offset the pay increases. Maybe I got that wrong.
Steve, it's Rob Word. I actually was just looking at that earlier today, and the year-to-date spend through February was 0 on the summer temporary.
This is Amy St. Ange. That's correct. There was no summer help. Initially, we just couldn't find summer help because so many people were on the unemployment rolls. And then it just worked out that we applied it towards that pay differential for the union contract.
So the estimate for 21 should be 0 then, I assume. I'm sorry, for 20.
Correct. It's not being applied to parks. So in that essence, yes.
Right, well, this is the line for the park, so I assume it should be,
Orla, can you put that up on the screen?
I'm sorry, it's FY 21 and I think it should be 0, if my thinking's right. We didn't spend any money for temporary summer help.
Oh, I see. Steve, you must be talking about the estimate FY21 column.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Aaron, is Orla with us?
Yeah, she may have stepped away for a moment. Orla, are you there? All right, once she comes back. I know, Rhonda, you were asking that she puts the spreadsheet up on the screen.
Yeah, it's easier than also the people can see it as well.
Yeah, good point.
But I agree with Steve in that aspect.
So I just got a text from Orla that says trying to. She must mean trying to get the screen up. I wonder if her connection froze or something.
She might have to log out and log back in again because she obviously can't speak, possibly.
Yeah, right. She texted me, so that means she can hear us,
Right.
but we can't hear her. So.
She's also muted, Aaron.
If your connection is frozen, feel free to log out and then log back in, period. Okay. Life in the Zoom lane.
Well, given that the estimate is inaccurate, I think anyway, for the summer help, are the other numbers, the supplies and so forth, are those right, or are those also incorrect? Rob, if you looked at year to date, I don't know if you looked at those accounts or not.
I did. I don't remember all of them, but I could pull it up real quick. Just take me a second.
Looks like Orla must have logged off.
Yeah, she said that she was going to log off and log back in, or at least try to.
So the answer is no on the $6,000. Rob Wurge, it looks like $157 spent year to date.
One of the things that Rob, you proposed, and I thought was very helpful, is to compare the proposal for 22 to both the prior budget and to the estimate for the current year. And it's
I think it's going to
not
come up
helpful
on
if
the
you don't have the
screen.
current year in there.
Now, the challenge, if I could add to that, the challenge is that we don't, we had the same situation came up in Public Works.
Right.
So the estimate was just pegged. And I look back through at those, and there's some that are tracking to spend to budget, and there's others that are not. So the question is, will that play catch up or are we underspent? In some cases, it was quite significant, just like we're seeing here in the parks area. In some cases, it was quite significant. So if you're not spending it in 21, is there a reason why? And should it carry forward to 22, or do we not need that much in the go forward?
Yeah, Rob, exactly right. That's, if you're looking at both the prior budget and the current year estimate is, again, a very helpful exercise for us, I think. At least for me, it is.
Well, and if I could continue, the reason for it is that the prior budget was set about this time last year. So your crystal ball is pretty hazy.
Yep.
The current estimate should be what you'd call a 8+4, meaning 8 months actual, 4 months remaining. And you'd think that after going through 8 months, with only 4 left, you'd have a better handle on what 21 will really be versus a year ago.
You're absolutely right, Rob. But there are a few exceptions where it's seasonal or something, but generally speaking, you're right.
I can speak on this if anybody has any questions.
So this is Amy St. Ange. These are numbers that were pulled today for all of Public Works, Parks, Transfer Station, etc. And Rich can certainly speak, if you'd like him to, on the various amounts that are either encumbered or the plans for utilizing the funds at this point. If the
Sure.
board.
No, let's go to highway signs 533070. So $10,000, we spent $2,700. We got 3
Correct.
months. We got 3 months left. Are we going to spend another $7,500 in the last 3 months?
Probably so, yes.
Okay. Do we have to spend it?
That all depends. Did you want to continue with the sign upgrade project or not?
I don't know. I don't know how many signs we've done and how many we have left and if we've got the manpower to finish it.
So we've bought, at this point in time, we bought enough of the road signs to replace 2 plow routes. There is 8 plow routes total, I believe, 9 plow routes total worth of street signs. So the purpose, there was an increase last year in this line item so that we could convert all of our signs over to legal color and reflective. The existing signs that were done under my predecessor's term were put up as red with a town seal on them. Most of them are either faded or not supposed to be there because the only red sign that's supposed to be on a signpost at an intersection is a stop sign.
Okay.
So we are in the process of transitioning over to all green and also going a uniform with all of our posts and signs so that everything is the same. Whereas right now we have a very large mix match of different style signposts, different hardware, different signage. So the plan was this year to buy another 2 plow routes worth of signs to continue until we get them all upgraded. So it wasn't a solid hit all in one shot.
Got it. Okay. Can we move to 533240 down a little bit? There's a line item called equipment repairs. We spent about 11,000 year to date on a 42,000 budget
And a 42,000 estimate.
and a $42,000 estimate. So that was one. Are we gonna spend the last 28,000, 30,000 in the last 3 months?
I can't put a number on how much money we are going to spend. What I will tell you is that at the current time, our mechanic is working on doing all of the maintenances and repairs that are necessary to the equipment that we'll be utilizing over the summer months. That's been sitting dormant for the winter. So we will go through a significant amount of that money. And it honestly, it doesn't take very long. One item could take, we had one truck, just for example, we had one truck go down this winter for what seemed like a simple repair turned into $8,000 in about a day.
Right. And up on 522281 tree service.
Yep.
Remember exactly, it was 15,000 and I forget what we spent, but it was low.
That money is actually already spent. I'm just waiting on an invoice.
Paula, could you move up kindly?
I'm sorry, Rob, what number am I scrolling up to?
Right there.
522.
5222.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
We've spent nothing year to date, and we had 15,000 in the budget. Look, Rich, we're kind of going on yours first. I'm not necessarily picking on Public Works. It's just, when we're seeing increases in some other areas, like on the wages,
Right.
these monies aren't needed in the following year. These are areas where maybe, hey, we look at the current year, we didn't spend quite as much as we thought. Can we live with that next year? It's
Right.
just, now, if you say, no, Rob, our equipment's old and we're going to buy a bunch of parts before the end of the year, then, I understand that.
Right.
But the reason for going through these estimates is to kind of go line by line to fully understand what do we really need for the remainder of the year, and that'll help us target what we need for next year.
Yes. So as far as the tree service goes, we had some money that was encumbered from prior year, and also the 15,000 that's in this year. I'm currently waiting. We just finished out with a tree contractor that we had come into town to take out some large dead caterpillar trees, the oak trees that had died off from the gypsy moths. So they spent, I think, 7 days with us. And I'm currently waiting on an invoice for that. They haven't billed me yet. Their last date of work was the end of last week. So the bulk of that money, if not all of it, is going to be going to that invoice. And I have a separate tree crew scheduled for Tuesday to spend a day removing trees on a piece of town property, an actual drainage property that's been left overgrown for some years. And I've also just scheduled again that same contractor for the beginning of May to remove some trees in preparations for our road construction project on Quadic Road.
But I see things going in the opposite direction as well. Take the 522370 equipment rentals. The
Yes.
estimate says we're going to spend 2,000. We've already spent 4.
Yes. Last year,
I'm sure we did spend the 4, but I don't understand why we say the estimate's 2 when we've already spent 4. That's the question, I guess.
there was something that came up that was not foreseen prior. We had an issue with one of our paving rollers, which unfortunately is something that I would like to have in a budget expense as far as capital, to buy something that is a little bit more sufficient for our process, but that's not going to happen anytime soon with the need for other equipment. So I ended up opting to do all of our in-house paving over the course of a 1-month period. And we rented a roller from Caterpillar to utilize for that month, so we could get all of our work done with a decent machine that would give us the compaction we needed to make the roads last.
I'm not disputing the spending. I'm not disputing the fact that you needed to do it, Rich. My concern really is that even though we have spent 4, we're saying we're estimating we're only going to spend 2.
Right. I'm not expecting to rent a roller for the month.
But if we've already spent 4, how are we only going to spend 2? We're not going to unspend $2,000. That's I think the point I'm trying to make. Not that the expense wasn't legitimate and needed. Don't mistake me. That's not my question at all. It's more, why do we estimate 2 if we've already spent 4?
No, I get that, but the only answer that I can give you is the fact that I don't know what this year is going to hold as far as if we need to rent equipment. Basically, it's a $2,000 placeholder for the ability to rent something if it's necessary, and then if we can keep it under that number, which in the past we have, then that's fantastic. If not, then we have to make up for it, when we finalize all the numbers at the end of the year.
Rich, I don't think I'm communicating very well. The sheets in front of us say that we expect to only spend $2,000 in this account for the total year. We've already spent 4, and I'm not saying it wasn't needed, legitimate, anything like that.
Right.
But how can we estimate 2 if we've already spent more than that? It raises a question about how valid are the estimate numbers here. And again, those are or can be useful numbers in developing a budget.
Right.
It's again, no dispute on the need for it, no dispute at that. And who knows, you might have to spend more. I understand, but I just kind of question the estimate. Doesn't appear to be very useful there. I'm not sure where that number came from. It clearly isn't based on anything, I guess. I don't know.
So I think that there is, so basically that particular line item has been at, that was the flat number that's been carried over from year to year in that. Last year we did rent some equipment and we were able to keep it under the $2,000. This current year, we overspent because it cost more money than what we had in that account to rent the machine that we rented to get the work done. So now moving forward, I'm not expecting to have to rent that machine this year. So obviously I'm not gonna request $4,000 noting that I spent it last year. If I request the $4,000 this year and I don't go out and rent a machine for a month period, then that was a waste to my request. That's just asking for more money than I believe that I'm going to need.
Well, actually, it looks like that you have proposed spending 4,000 next year. So. I don't want to get into the
Aaron?
weeds. We should just probably move on.
I just
Steve,
was
can this, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rhonda, you're on the board, I'm not.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering if we can put the same exact, this looks different than the sheet that we have in front of us so that we can all follow along. I know this is more of a maybe a detailed breakdown, but we can't see the top column to see what he's comparing it to. And I don't know if Orla is on now with that or if that was somebody else sharing the screen. What were we just looking at?
That was actually me sharing the screen because one of the things that were asked for last week were these items. Everybody apparently wanted to see what the actual numbers were. So we were trying to provide that for you. But we can go back to just the budget itself and that's fine.
If all that information is also on the budget, I think that would be.
No, it's not. It has not been plugged in.
All right, so we can go, I mean, I'm just curious as to what we were looking at and if we could see that top column. And I have no problem being on that page if that's where everybody wants to be. It's definitely helpful to look at, but you know, that's all I had to say.
No, that is actually, I wasn't looking at the sheet for the proposal, so that was my mistake. Steve, you are correct. I did carry that 4,000 across.
I'm in favor of moving on, Aaron, if you'd like to. I don't think this is a public works discussion. It's a discussion with Orla. It's prevalent throughout the whole document. And
Rob, could you speak up a little bit?
I said I'm okay with moving on from here. This is not a public works issue. I think really what's happened both in public works and in the parks area, we're just seeing it there right now because we're on that section, but this exists throughout the whole document where we don't have accurate estimates. It's just plug numbers or copy paste forward. There's really not time and energy put into really figuring out what the spend rate is in the current year.
Rob, you're absolutely, and Rich, this is not, Rob's absolutely right. This is not a question about the spending that you've done or proposed. It's more about whether the estimates in your departments and others are really reflecting what we expect to spend in the current year. It isn't really a question about your particular accounts. Rob's absolutely right on there.
Make a comment about that.
Sure.
This information is put together in December. I do ask each department head to give me an estimate. We base it on the estimates that we have. It's as moving as we can, but I have not updated any estimated numbers since this was reviewed by the Board of Selectmen, which started at the beginning of February. I do when I can and when I provide with that information, but unfortunately, if I don't have the information, time is of the essence, and I got to get it up and running and get ready for meetings. But yeah, I mean, ideally, it would be great if I could continuously estimate these numbers, but sometimes that's not always possible.
Thank you, Orla.
All right. So I think we were on parks, 3203. There we go. Orla, you're on 3202. We're on 32, at least. Are you frozen, Orla? Oh dear. Did she freeze again?
Well, she's moving something. She's moving something on the screen.
She's also, she's muted to speak too.
Yep, okay. Technical difficulties.
Now, Orla, if you can hear us, if you could go to Department 3203,
She probably can.
Parks. I think she's gone.
Well, technology's not always perfect.
Well, we used to take Holy Thursday off. Remember that?
Yes. Maybe this is a sign.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I'm sorry. I'm having no end of IT issues tonight. I'm going to try and share this document again. I also lost my sound for a moment, but it seems to be back. Did anybody ask me a question I still have to answer?
Yeah, we're at 3203, Orla.
Okay.
It looks like Google Chrome wants access to your entire computer.
Oh my gosh. Oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
Is that what it's saying now?
It's Google Chrome wants access to Control Finder. Allowing control will provide access to blah, blah, blah. That's one of those things where I just click X because you know if you say yes, it's going to download some virus onto your computer.
Yikes. I have no idea.
Huh, I didn't see that.
Oh, really? Maybe it's my computer, but
It might be yours, Aaron. You better
I didn't get it either.
go there.
when I click on it, it doesn't do anything.
It's after you,
Don't
Aaron.
click on it.
Oh, here we go. It was on my computer. It's a good thing I clicked it to X that out. All right, parks. Any other discussion on parks? All right.
Is Leslie here tonight? Is she in charge of parks, or who's in charge of parks?
I am.
Oh, Rich. Okay. So I just getting back on the original conversation that started here, which was, I think it was for a few numbers, had we spent the estimated amount or not? Did a lot of this stuff with the parks not go into the budget last year, or it was in but wasn't spent because of COVID issues possibly, or?
That was basically the gist of it. So obviously the $10,000 from the summer temporary help, that ended up going to the union contract, and we were unable at the time, having some issues with people didn't want to actually come to work because they were getting paid to stay at home. So I did sit down. Leslie and I work kind of together, hand in hand, with the park stuff because she's, very active in the recreation department and her programs, and she kind of oversees some of the park stuff. Whereas I spend the majority of my time doing road stuff, so I don't spend as much time in the park. So we kind of conglomerate a little bit on that. So her and I had sat down this morning because I've been going through the numbers for the budgets and trying to see, what was spent, what wasn't spent. So obviously, yes, the numbers are correct. The 533,340, which is ground supplies parks.
Excuse me 1 second. Can you go to the next page, please? Sorry, Rich.
No, absolutely.
That way there, everybody can see what you're referring to. That might be on the, there we go. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so that is actually correct. So the at the moment, according to the report that we ran, that Paula ran today, so there is currently $5,586 left in that line item. That's the ground supplies parks. And then the next line item, the park maintenance line item, there is $1,200 in that. So we sat down today to discuss what we could do with that money that or what we were supposed to do with that money this year that we didn't because of COVID, because everything got shut down. And Leslie is actually working on spending a few of those dollars. Currently, she's ordering new bases for the baseball field down in the park, the Riverside Park, because the bags on 2 of the bases, I believe, are completely blown out, worn out. So that was one of the things we discussed making some more repairs to the lighting down there, which has just been an ongoing issue. The globes keep getting broken. We're starting to convert that slowly over to LED. Because the bulbs that are in those park lights, they require a driver to run the bulbs. And at this point in time, to replace a bulb and a driver is about twice the cost of putting an LED bulb in it. It does take a special type of bulb in there. I believe they're a couple $100 a piece. But so we talked about that. And there was a few other things that were on the list of things that really needed to get done before the summer season. Especially now that the Maker Fair is being planned for the beginning of May, I believe it is. So there was some improvements that were going to be done before that. So we are working on making those improvements before we finish out this fiscal year, so we can start a plan for next year.
Thank you.
The other thing that catches my eye is that in the years before, which were not COVID affected, we spent $105 on that line, and then $0 2020. And we've spent nothing so far this year, but we need $1,200 next year.
And like I said, there again,
No, I heard you, Rich.
I spend my time on the roads and not in the parks, so it makes it very difficult to tell you exactly what's going to happen.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just an observation.
This is Leslie Muncher, our Recreation Director, if I may just say, I think coming in just a little under 2 years, like Rich was saying, we really work in tandem in this department. And so now having a better understanding of, what this budget is and where the line items are and what those funds are designated for, I think that be able to work, with Rich in designating the needs of the parks. We've started an annual park walkthrough. So now 2 years in a row, we walk through in January when we're going through the budget season. This year we did it in November because the year before was a little chilly, to identify those needs. And then we check back in when the weather's getting warmer, like we just did do, to sort of set that schedule for the spring, when they can work on those projects. So it's definitely something we're figuring out with the transition that's happened in the rec office over the last 3 or 4 years or so, and in DPW as well. But Rich and I seem to be working well together and figuring out how to manage it, in tandem. And we've designated some projects for him to follow up with and some for myself, so we can keep our parks looking great.
Any other discussion on parks?
Not a discussion, but it might be worthy to.
Thank you.
We can't hear you.
Is someone trying to talk?
Robert.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was going to suggest that maybe Orla box those in so we can come back to them. I'd like to at least have a reminder to come back to those later. I'd box in the summer temporary help too. Unless we really think we're going to have people on board all summer.
At this point in time, it is the plan to advertise those positions and hire 2 part-time individuals for the summer.
Okay.
Any other discussion on parks?
I'd just like to add one thing. I just think it's really attractive to have the parks looking good. So I think that's important. That's it.
Any other discussion on parks? Okay, we'll move on to transfer recycling center.
Aaron, I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
This is a question for Rich. The tipping fees went up $11,000 this year over last year. Can you just give us a quick rundown why that amount of money they went up?
That would be thanks to COVID. We were paying for recycling, so the prices of all of our rebate pricing, we get up-to-date pricing every month from our vendors that we deal with, is mostly Casella Waste for recycling products. We do deal with a couple other places, those for other products like tires, which we pay to get rid of. We do charge for those to come in, we pay for them to go out. There was some issues with the waste stream with COVID, and also the Chinese market kind of dropped out from under us for our recycled products, and they stopped taking our plastics and some other things. So basically what we were used to seeing for rebates did drop off significantly for quite the period of last year. And we have seen an increase as of late to some of those things and others not. So, and also some of the things that we were used to getting a rebate for, we were in turn paying for because there was no market for them. So that would be what the increases were on those.
Thank you.
I thought we were going to put on a department like this where there's income related to what the department does. Is that now available on this sheet or somewhere? I thought we were going to try to include that.
Steve, yes, that is correct. I didn't get the opportunity to do that today, but I'll be doing it for next week's meeting.
Thank you.
And if you wish to know how much specifically we're collecting for this particular department, I can get those numbers for you and bring them up on the screen straight away. Saying those revenue numbers if you guys wish to take a look.
How are we doing, Orla, on the carve out of the tipping fees from our prior discussions? Do we have any data yet on that, or?
My understanding was there might be some miscommunication. I thought you didn't want me to go into the details at this stage. I was going to have Kelly started for the months of January, February, but my understanding was we weren't going to go that far. And if I was wrong in that, we can get moving on that for next week.
Well, I'll restate it, Orla. I think if we're charging people to bring in bulky waste, we should know whether we're charging enough or not. I don't want to get into a side discussion on this because it's going to bog us down.
No, I agree.
Now it's going up $11,000. We should be able to answer the fundamental question: are the charges appropriate, and are they adequate to cover our expenses? Particularly in light of the building boom that's going on.
Yeah.
You're already underwater on this line item by a lot. We shouldn't continue to go underwater on it if we're not collecting enough. And that should be a recommendation from the town, the town. We're not here to set the tipping fee rates. We're asking the question, is it appropriate?
Rich,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Orla, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just Rich and I have had many discussions regarding this, and I know he has a couple of thoughts on it. I wondered if you wanted to share them.
Well, we could do that, but I know that Kelly in my office did a whole analysis.
Yeah, there was something done. I don't have it with me.
And I don't have it either there, but I can certainly get it from Kelly for next meeting. But it showed that we were covering, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, we were covering the bulky waste expenses,
Yes.
or through bulky waste fees, we were covering the tipping fees. What's not being covered completely is the overall operating cost. That's where we're finding the shortfall, if I'm correct. In my understanding, the shortfall is coming from the operating expenses, which we know that this is a service that people value. Is it going to ever be more than a break even or slightly? It's not meant to be a profit maker, if I'm understanding correctly. That's always been the theory behind it. But if we want to see more of a break even proposition than the actual sticker permit, that's only $120 right now, would need to go up significantly to cover the operating cost.
I think that's right. In fact, that information that Kelly did provide to me, I did share in a combination spreadsheet for the Board of Finance back in January and in February. What Rob was referring to is literally getting into the weeds with regards to every transaction. What Kelly was able to do was break it down between all of bulky waste, all of MSG, all of daily permits. What Rob and I were talking about is literally going into the bulky waste and saying, what is costing us the most amount of money? So, and Kelly offered to do that. It was my misunderstanding. I was under the impression it was not needed at this stage. And one of the things that we were suggesting, we would do it during the quiet months, because it does give us some idea, but you've got less data to deal with than if you're talking about May, June, and July. So I'm happy to work with Kelly on that information. As I say, she said she'd work with us, and but yeah, it would require her literally going label by label, because our collections currently at the transfer station are all manual.
Okay, well, it's going up, so we should probably know if we're adequate. That's the question. However, we need to get there. I would just ask to show us the data.
Sure.
The data that we saw was not the data
Can I ask? I might be a little confused on this question. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the question is are what we are charging for the items that come in as far as bulky waste covering the cost of the bulky waste that we're putting out? Is that the question?
The question is very similar, Rich. Is it covering at least the cost of what is being added to what's going out? So if we're going to the transfer station and we're charged $5 to dump something, is it costing the town $5 or $10 or $50? Nobody could answer that question. So we don't know if we're charging double that what we should or half of what we should.
I believe what was in that spreadsheet that Orla and Amy just mentioned did cover a lot of that question.
Sorry to interrupt. It didn't. I looked at the spreadsheet in January. I really didn't want to get into this again in the middle of the workshop. Let's just get the data offline and determine if we've got the right numbers.
So I'll work with Kelly on what we have, what we could potentially get. We can take the first quarter of 2021, and we can get some information for the board for next week. I will elaborate on what I've already provided to the board.
Okay, and hazardous waste is 0, and we're not going to spend any this year. It's going to go to 10,000 next year. Is there an explanation why it went from 20 to 0 and then back to 10?
Orla, you want this one or you want me to answer it?
Oh, go ahead. It's every other year, Rob, and we do it during the month of July, I think, right, Rich?
Yeah, somehow there was a mix-up in a prior year budget where the number got doubled. It was supposed to be $10,000 per year that we put towards it for an every other year cost of just shy of 20,000 for the hazardous waste day. We did spend the money last year. I believe it was right at the end of last fiscal year. And then, so there is, I forgot where we're at with that. I think we were 0 for last, is that how this reads? We were 0 for last year. And now we're gonna,
this year and 0 for this year. So we're proposing a reduction. If you look at the dollars in here for what we actually spent last year, we did spend $20,000. Previous time it was 12,000, and it was done after the fact. So it was done in the following fiscal year. So we did actually have two activities during two simultaneous fiscal years, but there won't be anything this year. And Rich is proposing 10,000 for fiscal 22.
Okay, thank you.
That puts us back on track with our expense
Yeah,
every 2 years.
exactly. I think the larger amount was something to do, we used to do it with another town and we didn't do it anymore and it ended up costing us more. Does this ring a bell, Rich?
Yeah, there was,
Yeah.
we had done it as a shared event with Putnam, and it was something got messed up. I'm not sure how that happened.
Orla, I noticed you have the red line there on equipment repairs. Was that from a previous conversation today?
Was increase based on money moved from repairs and public works budget. So if you see the actual for for fiscal 1920 was 6299, and in this case here we have increased it. We have increased it to the current year's budget is 13.5. In fact, fiscal 2021 is when those dollars were moved from one budget to another. It's just that red line is in there, but it actually happened last year's budget season.
Any other discussion on transfer station? I agree with Rob Words that if we have any kind of fee-based service in town, people who make full use of that service, just by the very nature of the way it's designed, should pay. Whereas people who don't really make use of that service, it makes sense that their property taxes would contribute to the operations of whatever that service is. But if they're not using the service and it is a fee-based service, they probably, I wouldn't suppose that they should have to pay as much as people who are making full use of that service. In the case of, I don't know, bulky waste, coming in with truckload after truckload, dumping and dumping and dumping. Doesn't make sense that guy should have to pay no more than someone who's not doing it at all. Not to say that's necessarily what's happening here, but the point being, if we're not charging enough, we really should take a look at charging enough. And I guess the reason I say that is because I know when it gets down to late April and we're looking for places to cut, a departmental increase of $25,000, it lights up bright. I just know in my experience, it shines very bright. It practically says, cut me. So if there's some way that we can make sure we're charging enough for fee-based services so that we don't have a departmental increase that's shining so bright, that probably would be in the best interest of everybody.
Just as a little background, if I believe that there's about a little over 4,000 households in our town, and we have about 2,000 permits issued. So roughly a little over 2,000, I believe. So I think roughly half the households in our town actually use the transfer station, using those very rough kind of numbers. So half use it and half pay for it, but don't use it.
And I know depending on what you bring in, because I use a transfer station, depending on what you bring in, you may have to pay extra. That's what the manager takes a look in the back of your truck and either waves you through or says you owe me extra 5 or an extra 10 or extra whatever for whatever you got in there. So if we're charging appropriately, that would be a good thing.
Rob, man, I agree with you both. I've actually found throughout the years that I've used the transfer station myself, that a lot of times the bulky waste becomes a bargain compared to getting a dumpster in your yard. So it's definitely something that we in long term should look at, because it's a lot easier to throw it in a trailer or a truck and take it down there and get rid of it than it is to have to pay somebody else's service of dropping something off at your house and picking it up and paying them $150 convenience fee.
Yeah, even if we were to increase the fees for certain things, it would still be a bargain compared to, as Rob Mann says, as opposed to, compared to bringing in a commercial rental, it's still a bargain.
And Aaron, we have a weight charge, so this might not be a very complicated exercise. Just when you bring in something in the back of your truck, as you described, it might be $5 or $10. If you're bringing in a trailer full of something from a job site, you got to get weighed.
Yep.
So pretty simple exercise. Let's figure out how much we charge per weight when someone comes in, and how much do we get charged for weight going out. And if we're adequate, we're good. We'll never talk about this again. But if we're not, I think it's a good exercise to look at offsetting 8% increase, potentially offsetting part of it. Maybe.
Not only that, I'd much rather fund the town by having them make money on me getting rid of my bulky waste than some other individual.
Quick answer to a small question. Our incoming fee for bulky waste is based off of $155 per ton. Outgoing fee that we're paying to get rid of it at Wheeler Brader, I believe is 82. I might be a little off on that one, but I know it's less than 90.
Currently 82.
Okay.
So we're getting more money in, is what you're saying?
Yes. We're charging more than what we are paying.
You can, I agree with that scenario, but on the other side of it, we know we have capital costs with roll-off trucks, and we know we're paying a town employee that has to bring it there, drop it off. I don't know how long those things take, but it's all comes with a cost.
Correct.
And I'm just thinking, if you're bringing in so much that you qualify for that scale, that's a lot. You're a contractor. You're a commercial type entity. You're not a typical resident with a pickup truck who basically, cleaned out his garage or his back shed. That's a big vehicle if you qualify for that scale. And if you're doing it over and over again, yeah.
Right. That's not necessarily true in this circumstance, but you are correct. And we have cut down on that drastically over the last 3 years. With the enforcement of the rules and the new employees that we have, that effect has changed extremely. So a lot of times now, the people that are going on the scale are the residents like myself or yourself that are doing a weekend project and have to get rid of something, and there's a truckload of boards or something. We no longer accept any type of major construction debris because it doesn't go to landfill anymore. So we have to condense what we're allowed to bring in. So that did push a lot of that whole contractor thing away. And it is specifically in the rules for the transfer station and is being enforced that we are not accepting contractor debris.
Good to know. And let's go through the exercise all the same, just to make sure that we are charging appropriately. Just like I said, I just know, based on having been on the Board of Finance for 10 or more years, a $25,000 departmental increase, it catches your eye when it's late April and you're looking for some place to cut. It catches your eye. Because if the proposed budget as it is right now, I think it's looking for $1.5 million increase, which, okay, I'll be the first one to say it. It's April 1st. I can't imagine that would go. I've never seen that go in all my years. So that means at some point after all this talking, the Board of Finance has got to figure out places to bring it down. So when there are certain departments where the the requested amount looks to be kind of high. That's usually places where we look first. Any other discussion on transfer station? We'll move on to cemeteries.
Aaron, I got a question on that.
On cemeteries?
Yeah. I'd like to see what's the rationale for this budget went up. This budget was tripled. It went from 500 to 1,500. Just like to know the rationale on that one.
Most of the $500, since in my time that I've been here, has basically just been a placeholder for that account, that department. So in talking with Norma O'Leary about all of the work that she's been doing in the cemeteries that the town is caring for, her group is caring for, we maintain, I want to say it's 11 cemeteries in town. During the summer months, we have to mow them, trim them, keep the trees down. A lot of those, there's a lot of cemeteries, and some of those 11 are cemeteries that have been let go for many years. And through the actions of certain people in this town, those cemeteries have been being restored. So I spoke to Norma about the $500 that is existing in this year's budget. And I said, I really want to start helping out more with this. Public Works does do some work in those cemeteries as far as the maintenance during the summer months. And then we walk away from them for the rest of the year, which, one would. But Norma has been just really doing some impressive work with cleaning them up and getting headstones reset that have been flopped over for years, restoring some stones. Just an example of the Aquatic Cemetery, which is at the end of Towns Lane on the edge of Aquatic Lake. I believe they've had, I want to say it's 40 some odd trees removed from that cemetery. They were pine trees that had been left overgrown for many years and were in excess of 80 to 90 feet tall. So, she was unaware that this money existed, and I felt that it was, it really should be spent on some of that work. And she does currently, so it's showing $0 spent for this current fiscal year. There is a plan for that money that she is going to utilize before we close out the year. We're looking to put a little bit more of an investment on the town side from that in the years moving forward to continue that progress.
Rich, what do you actually spend it on?
What's that?
What do you actually buy with this money?
So this money would be for any like 1/4-inch stone they use to set the bases of the monuments, any tools or supplies, paint for any railings, or hiring of going towards paying for a contractor to come in and to remove trees or do work that we don't have people to do. Any number of tools and supplies. Basically, what it would go towards.
Aaron, could I interject, please?
Sure, go ahead.
This is one that I'm a little closer to, and I know that. Thank you, Rich, for the explanation. Norma puts in a tremendous amount of energy. She raises a lot of money through Thompson Together. There's other forms of funding. I don't know what she spends, but it's way more than 500 to get these cemeteries back to a decent looking condition. This to me falls under the pride in our town. We talk about our parks and our drive-by and what things look like. The amount of work she's done on stone walls, bringing volunteer help in to cut trees, to fix stone walls. We have a lot of historical monuments and cemeteries, and for me, $1,000 more to make our town look better. This to me is an easy one. I know it's triple, but keep in mind that a lot of money is spent and raised to make our town look better.
Any other discussion on cemeteries?
I've talked to her in the past, and she does get an unbelievable amount of volunteer work done. So I'd give her tons of credit for all that she's been able to accomplish with basically nothing.
I may, this is Leslie Munshire, a recreation director, but I'm also sit on the Thompson Together board, and typically they budget about $1,000 a year in the cemetery line item. Additionally, Norma does apply for some grants and has gotten some grants in the past. I believe last year's $1,000, and then there are private donations as well. So typically in a year, Thompson Together will spend between $1,000 and $2,000 on the cemeteries.
Any other discussion on cemeteries? Okay, we'll move on to snow removal. Any discussion here?
Do you have any kind of estimate for the current year?
I was wondering about that.
This is Amy Sainonge. I do have sheets showing the totals that we're at for this year, and Rich would be happy to explain if you'd like me to share my screen. Just let me know.
If you could just tell us the numbers, Amy, if that might be quicker, if you have an estimate for the current year. For the 2 or 3 big items on this page.
Okay, which big items are you looking for?
Snow overtime, maybe?
Okay. I think
the
they were
other-
at 40,
and it's all.
45-ish, but let me just pull it up. Hold on.
I can answer that if you want, Amy.
Do you have it right at your fingertips? Okay.
Yes, so
Great.
current expended, this is effective as of today. Snow overtime, $46,449.25.
Thank you. And salt and sand?
Salt and sand, year to date expended, that is not right. That can't be right. It says on the paper $87,082.39.
I know you'll top it off at the end before the end of the year, so I don't know
Yes.
if it's filled already or not. So
And then the equipment repair line item, we have spent $10,152.93. That
Rich, quick question. It looks like the additional payroll was just swapped into, removed out of that line item and put into snow overtime. Is
Yes.
that correct? Are you going to be removing that line item then next year, the additional payroll line, or?
yes, that payroll was there because we had a part-time employee that actually had a plow run. And then that person is no longer employed by us. And then when we added the position that we added, was it last year, or the year before, that person, we now have all full-time staff cover all of the plow routes in town. So we're no longer hiring a part-time person to cover a run.
the only thing that current year is, from what I'm looking at, to what you just talked about, is the salt and sand itself. It looks like we'll be well under the 150.
Yes, at the moment, it is how it appears. I wish I had my paperwork with me that has all my orders on it, because I don't feel like that number is correct.
Thank you.
Steve, I could add that through the February report, it was 100,000 spent out of the 150. So, which may be over by now. That was through the end of February.
Sometimes we get a storm in March, so that's why I think it hits us. You can look at the back, obviously in 2020, we had a good year. 2019, it went over the 150. So it's
So hard to predict, right?
yeah.
Any other discussion on snow removal? Move on to building official.
Aaron, I got a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
As far as the building official, does he use his own personal car, or does is he allocated a truck from the town? The reason I say that is if you look under truck expense is at 0. I'm just curious: does he use his own fuel? I'm just curious to see if what's going on with that.
This is
can
Amy.
answer
This
that.
is Amy. I was going to say he uses his own truck, doesn't he? But does he get gas rich? This is Amy St. Ange.
Yes, he does use his own personal vehicle. He does have a fuel key, and he does put fuel in his vehicle. I will vouch for the fact that that is one person that you won't find abusing that system. And it is also tracked and charged to the department every month. I want to say he might fill his truck once a month.
Now, is this person also, just out of curiosity's sake, does he get insurance and any other benefits, or is this a flat fee that we pay this gentleman?
This is Amy St. Ange. I'd lean towards Orla just for confirmation, but I do not believe Terry gets health benefits.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to see that compared to his gross salary and stuff like that. I just wanted to see what was going on there. Thank you.
Yeah, he actually is. So he does not receive benefits. He currently works based on the dollars that he receives. He receives a currently biweekly amount of 1549.58. It does not include benefits. It does not include vacation.
Okay.
He generally would, based on this is a salaried position, but the salary is currently based on 16.88 hours. But most likely he's working a lot more hours than that. And that was one of the reasons why he proposed an additional his salary to be based more upon 19.99 hours, which still keeps him under the threshold for benefits. But it does mean that he could earn additional dollars to justify the additional hours that he's working.
I guess I got one more question. As far as this new line item for overtime for secretary temp help, I see you asking for $5,000 for that. Is the clerk that busy that they're requiring additional help? What's going on there to pitch the 5,000?
So Jim, what we faced this year, this is Amy St. Ange, is yes, the building department is extraordinarily busy. Obviously, we don't anticipate this to continue too much longer, but what we experienced this year is because this secretary administrative assistant is union, there were no overtime hours allotted to her. So she was continually using comp time, whether it was because a builder showed up at 2:30 and then she was stuck with him until 3:30 or 4 o'clock. She had lots of comp time hours and now she's trying to use that time. So we decided to put in some overtime for her just to help alleviate the problem that we were facing. Because as she gained comp time, then she'd have to take time off to use the comp time, which would put her farther and further behind. So it was like this no-win situation. So we knew we had to do something to help her this year, to help that department out.
Okay, thank you.
Again, if I might ask, the income for this department, because they do collect building fees. So it looks like the income is going to offset the cost. That is great.
Yeah, we've seen a major increase in activity. You see the climb, we went from 64 to 100. The estimate is 125 for this year, and I think Terry's being conservative in estimating the same income for next year. I'll swing back to the expense account.
Any other discussion with building official?
Only other question, Aaron, that I had was on the building official hours. We're moving those up, but I also heard that might not need to stay up. It really is more based on activity. So is there a better way to represent that? I mean, should we maybe leave it at the current 16.8 and then put either an overtime or an additional hours line? Because my concern would be once it goes up, it stays up, and right now there's a really strong justification and a need for it. But maybe next year, maybe the year after, we may not need that if things slow up.
So Rob, just a little bit of history. We had up to when Terry took over, we had a person full-time in this position working 35, 40 hours a week, and we felt at the time that we could get away with a reduced rate hours. Terry was available to us. It was perfect timing. He was willing to work 15 hours a week, and we really thought that might get us by, but it was going to be a bit of a push. I think, he's certainly working more than 20 hours a week right now. Just based on the volume I've seen in the 6 years I've been there, I don't think we'll ever get to the stage where 20 hours is too much. I just don't see it happening. I think we'd have to go back to 2007 or 2008 when things were very quiet. At that stage, maybe that's a conversation we could have with Terry and see if he's interested in reducing his hours down to 15.
Yeah, you kind of talked the story, which was exactly my concern.
Okay.
The prior position was at 35 hours and it wasn't needed.
It wasn't needed in the few years before Terry took over. That is
Right.
for sure.
So it may very well be needed now to go to 20. And if we think 20 is going to be permanent moving forward, then let's leave it. Just what goes up doesn't normally come down. So I was just suggesting if it was going to be temporary, put it in as temporary. If it's not temporary and it's really a 20-hour-a-week job, then I'm fine. Question's answered.
Yeah, one of the things that is this, when this position was negotiated, it was negotiated as a salary based on 15 hours a week. We don't pay, it's not as if Terry isn't necessarily needed to produce a timesheet every week. He does, because we ask them for each employee's, but he's a salaried position. So, for example, there might be a week where he's only working 5 hours, but the next week he could be working 50. So we'd have to readjust the kind of a contract agreement that we have with him for his employment. Should we want to do that? And maybe that's a conversation offline, if we want to consider that, and maybe, I don't know. I know based on his retirement, he would not be able to work more than 19.99 hours. That's based on his position in his prior job.
This is Amy St. Ange. Can I just speak to this department? And as far as Terry is a highly skilled individual. It's really a niche market to find a building official that's as qualified as Terry is. And we'll be hard pressed to find a replacement someday because Terry is getting closer to, he's technically retired already. We're blessed to have him on board, but at some point we are going to have to consider someone who's going to potentially need a 30 or 35 hour week just to perform the duties of building official. So I think that we just need to keep that in mind. And I just thought that was important to share.
That's a good point, Amy. There are not enough qualified people to do this work. Plainfield went through a very tough time as well. So there's just too many towns and too much building going on, and there aren't enough people that have, the skill set is quite, it's extremely broad when you think of all the trades and to get a good building official. So you're absolutely right.
It is, and alternatively, the people that are qualified to potentially pass the exam to become a building official are busy building houses and making more money than a town could afford to pay them. So that's the other thing that we'll face.
Right.
I wonder if you might touch on the secretary to the building official, the hourly rate. I'm not sure I understand the change. If I see this, I see $23.90 is the current rate.
We moved part of, this is Donna Hall. Donna Hall also now manages the fire marshal and the burn officer.
Okay.
So we moved some of her hours. I think that's what you're asking. We moved some of her hours to the fire marshal's budget.
I also have a question on the rate. It went from $23.90. It looks like the increase is $210. And then if I understand right, it's the total $25.66, if that's intended to be that.
Yes, that was negotiated in the union contract. Donna is also the longest term employee. She has the most tenure in the town. So additionally, she is taking on extra work with the fire marshal.
Okay.
So she's got a bigger workload. So that was negotiated under the union contract.
I guess my question is, if it's currently $23.90 and it's going up $2.10, it comes up to more than $25.66. Is that, did I missing
Correct.
something?
No, you're not missing anything. That was the union contract negotiation for
Okay,
this.
so she didn't get a 2% increase.
Correct. She got
Something less than that.
she was the only one in the union contract that got an increase.
Okay, okay. So the 210 is wrong.
No, the increase is correct because she took on an additional workload. She has an additional title. She manages the fire marshal.
Oh, at a different rate?
No, that's her rate as building official / fire marshal administrative assistant.
I think somebody just changed it to make it make sense now, because it was.
Oh, was it not right? I'm sorry. Was I not reading it right? I can't see the screen very
Said
well.
the current rate was $23.90. The increase was $210. That comes up to 26, I think. And yet it's showing a smaller amount than that per hour. I assume that's the hourly rate on the right-hand side. So somebody's just.
I did make a correction there, just so you guys know. When initially we had gone through this process, the union contract had not been finalized and the dollar amount was a different dollar amount. So the final dollar amount, her position role, Donna's salary became the salary for the right role that she has within the bargaining unit, and that's where the correction was made. So it does not affect the bottom line number here. It just affected this box.
Okay. Well, you've changed the proposed rate increase, so now it makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that, Steve. I didn't know. I couldn't see the screen well because I need new glasses.
No
and
But that is the correct dollar amount, $25.66.
Any more discussion on building official? We'll move on to Building Board of Appeals.
Placeholder.
I was going to say it looks pretty quiet to me.
Yep.
I think it should be $10.
Yeah, right.
I think it was at one stage.
All right, we'll move on to General Services.
I'm just going to scroll up to the top because most of the activity is up here.
Orla, this Northeast Transit District, is this kind of like Northeast District Department of Health, where they basically say, look, if you want our service, here's how much we charge you every year.
Talk about this?
Can't really hear you very well.
Amy, do you want to talk about this?
Is this like,
Sorry,
Do
I keep muting myself.
does Northeast Transit just say, here's your invoice, this is it, you want us, this is what we charge you this year? Is that how that works?
That's absolutely correct, but I did go to John Filchek for an explanation, and this is what he said to me. Let me just find through his email. You will note that it is approximately double what the town is currently paying, which is the for the Northeast Transit District. That's for the bus service in town. It is not because we doubled the assessment. It has remained unchanged. The reason for this is that a number of years ago, the town asked for a reduction. I think because of budgetary or usage issues, but I don't fully recall, he says. In any event, the discount has been in place probably longer than it should have been. I really don't think it right nor reasonable to stick a doubling of the rate onto the town from one year to the next. It would be good, however, if we could work something out so that over the course of a few years, we could get Thompson on par with the other participating towns in transit. So we were paying less than comparable towns in the area for a number of years.
So does that mean, if I'm trying to read between his lines, does that mean that we should be paying 25,000 and he's trying to get us to 25,000 gently? Or what does he mean that there's some negotiating room in this $21,000?
I think I took it to mean there's some negotiating room. So if Board of Finance tells me that we have this much we can spend, I could technically go back and say, John, this is what we've got. Can you increase it a little bit this year and a little bit next year? And I'd be happy to do that.
Rob, man, sounds to me like he's just trying to lessen the impact of getting it back up to what the normal price is for everybody else. He just wants to do it gradually.
Right. And my numbers. So like transit services for Putnam. Were 20,000 approximately. So
20,000 what for FY21?
it's pretty much similar. It looks like it's comparable to what he's charging us this year.
It looks like to me, I can't imagine that we have as much use as Putnam because we have less residents in town. So I mean, I think if he's willing to stretch the increase out over a 2-year period, I think we should take that stretch. Because why not? I certainly don't think that we're utilizing that. I wouldn't imagine that we're utilizing that transit more than Putnam to the point where we would pay more even than Putnam.
No, I'm sorry, I should have this with me, and I can get it for you for the next meeting, but he did send me the totals for ridership last year. Oh, actually, I asked him for the previous year because this past year with COVID, things were different. So I asked him for the previous year. And I do have that in an email. I'll send it to all the Board of Finance members tomorrow.
This is Rob Works. To clarify, Rhonda, I thought I heard Amy say multiple or several years, not necessarily.
Yeah, let's see.
We could do it over a 5-year horizon, 2,000 a year for 5 years.
Over a course of a few years, correct.
Yeah, I think we should definitely highlight this one for money to be found here.
So to me,
Contact.
a few would be more than 2. Maybe Rhonda could get stretched to 4 or something reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it boxed already for that reason, Rhonda.
Oh, okay.
I think it's very important that we find out how many people are actually using this service. I'm really interested in seeing that number. I appreciate that, Amy, if you do get that to us.
Yes, I will forward that email to you.
If I might ask about additional programs, I noticed that the department requested 2,200 I'm not sure what's actually in there, but we're giving them more than they asked for, or you're suggesting more? That may be a collection of miscellaneous items. I'm not sure what's in the additional programs.
Steve, are you referring to Access Agency?
52, 27, 47.
Okay, so you're looking at the total. So the difference here is Access Agency. And it includes, Amy, maybe you want to talk about, it includes the 2,000 for the no freeze shelter?
Correct. Last year unfortunately, we hadn't paid it before they made their request this year. But last year we had made the decision we had reduced United Services last year, but we had increased what Access had requested because of their new no freeze shelter, which we thought was a very worthy cause. We thought it was important in regard to homelessness. And it was just a worthwhile cause, and we decided to keep it in for this year again. So they hadn't requested it because they didn't know that we had actually given them extra towards the shelter, because they didn't receive their payment until after January. It was almost into February before we sent out the payment to them. If that makes sense.
Amy, can I ask a question on that? Being that you did change it last year from United Services over to this line item for Access
We had kind of
Agency.
yes, we had shifted what we
Yeah.
were.
And so I realized, I thought, and I could be wrong, that the homeless no free shelter was going to be in Danielson or something to that nature. Do you feel, I mean, obviously you have it in the budget again, but did we have any residents? Are we aware that we had any of our residents in that no free shelter, and where the money's, better spent there actually than United Services, which helps with a lot of mental health, which I think we have a lot of, especially more now with regard to COVID.
Right. No, we did feel after, in fact, I had a conversation with Ann Miller at one point, and she said that, yes, homeless make their way to where they will get a warm night's sleep. And the shelters were filling when it was cold. Obviously last year it ended up not being very cold, but this year,
so we don't know if our residents actually used the shelter. Because
there's no way to know if a resident was there because they're homeless.
Ah, I get you. I see what I'm saying. Okay, I'm sorry to be I'm a little slow sometimes. So they don't actually have our address. Okay.
I know that the work that United Services does is so valuable, especially with the opioid crisis. They do a lot with addictions and mental health, like you said. So, yeah.
I just want to make sure we're balanced there, and they're both important.
Right.
I'm not saying that neither is more important than the other, but I think that they're both important, and I know that a ton of people use the United Services. So,
right, and certainly they kind of go hand in hand. With mental illness and potential for homelessness, it can sometimes, be one and the same.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
Has anyone brought up the line item about elderly housing - sewer charges yet?
Aaron, my question there is that recaptured in the revenue side? Is that just a balance out number? Orla?
It is in a sense, but we covered the cost. The town pays the cost of the sewer charges at the housing authority. We actually write a bill. They have they're a separate entity. They manage their finances separately. They have their own tax ID. So, but the town does cover it because it's town-owned property. Also, the increase is based on we haven't paid it yet. So there was
Marlo,
an increase last.
didn't the sewer fees increase this year?
Yeah, they increased for fiscal 2021. So the budget amount in for, of this would have been higher. And I believe I estimated 23,000 because of that potential increase. And they are not looking at an increase for fiscal 22, so I left it as is.
Well, I'm not sure if I understand, Orla. The $2,000 increase, does that come back through in the form of revenue? Is it a net zero or not?
No, it doesn't, no,
It doesn't.
no.
Where does the sewer charge go?
To the WPCA.
That's what you were commenting is a separate tax entity.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of different, Housing Authority, we don't do their finances, but we pay some of their bills. So we pay their sewer charges, but the money goes to WPCA, which is a completely separate entity to the town
Got it.
and not town-owned property.
So this $2,000 increase is being charged to us by the Water Pollution Control Authority.
Correct.
Thanks. Well, without having any more knowledge than just the numbers that in front of me, it would appear that maybe they're getting a good handle on their user fees.
We've had a couple of increases. They, with the big phosphorus removal project that they were required to carry out at the facility, that required a long-term loan with the DEEP, and they had to somehow cover the cost of that facility. So they did increase. There's been 2 increases over the last few years, and I don't believe they're anticipating an additional increase at this time for next year.
Any other discussion on general services? Anything else? I guess we'll move on to Veterans Service. Looks pretty quiet here. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll move on to Public Health. And speaking of the Northeast District Department of Health, it looks like they're bumping up their fee to us again. It's actually quite a bump considering they're $20,000 higher than they were in FY19.
Yeah, this is the highest proposal, but I think based on what I'm seeing, they will probably end up settling with this increase of $7 per capita, which is a huge increase. Unfortunately, I think for many, many years, the health department did not increase its per capita rate, and now it's come back to bite them. They typically have a very small budget. It's about $1 million, and they typically try to keep their unassigned fund balance. They tend not to bring it anywhere below 25%, which is the recommendation by their auditors. Yes, it is a big increase. Things have changed obviously dramatically in public health in the last year, and unfortunately they are trying to pay their bills, which is pretty minimal. They did have to hire additional staffing regarding COVID, but those positions were covered thankfully by COVID funds. So they still have a fairly bare bones staff, and with not substantial increases on their union side, but they were really struggling, and there was a lot of additional expenses that they were not anticipating. So worst case scenario, they're proposing is $7.
Is this number negotiable at all, like Northeast District Transit, or is this is what it is?
Well, you know, okay, there's a couple of ways to approach this. You can certainly express your concern. You can either do it in writing on behalf of the board, and I can bring it up with regards to the board and the finance committee there. It can be addressed through NECOG, because I believe all the members of NECOG are also members of NDDH's participating towns. But yeah, I mean, you're not the only town that's concerned about it. Every single Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance is crying out concern over this massive increase.
I noticed that $65,000 is 44% higher than $45,000, which was the FY19 fee. And I understand things have to go up over time. It's just that if we're looking at the FY22 budget, 44% increase in 3 fiscal years, that's quite a jump.
It's a chunk of money.
It's quite a jump.
Is in relation to fiscal, you know, one of the things that there's been a lot of discussion in the last few weeks with regards to potential funds coming for the towns from the American Rescue Act. One of the things that, you know, there's a lot of more discussion that will happen over the next few weeks with regards to how the town is going to receive it, what potentially the options they have with regards to spending it. But one of the things they are recommending it spent on is public health. So this might be something that that we can look at from Town of Thompson's perspective with regards to helping to pay these bills. It's hard for me to plan that at this stage, but you know, for example, I may be able to come back to you guys, whether it's next month or whether it's during the month of July or August, and say, okay, I have approval in this first round of American Rescue Act money to cover the entire 65,000. And if that's the case, then we have already have a surplus of 65,000 that can go back into our fund balance and help us the following year. So that's just a thought.
That would be great. But in the meantime, sort of looking at what we're looking at, you said what? Chairman of the Board of Finance can express concerns to whom? To John Filchek or to the NDDH or to you, or where do those concerns go?
The concerns would go back to the director
Of
and he would
NDDH?
communicate them to the board of directors. And also, I brought in John Filchek in relation to that because he represents the individual town councils and local governments as a group, as a whole. So, and you know, Amy attends the regular meetings that they have. So it might be a subject matter to bring up at the next meeting, if it hasn't been brought up already.
And sorry, I didn't catch that. When you said it would go back to the director of
Director of Health for NDDH.
Got it.
And she would communicate your concerns to the board of directors as a whole.
And who's the director at NDDH?
Sue Starkey, and I can send you her contact information.
All right, cool. I know this is kind of a belt and suspenders approach, but I'm reluctant to speak on behalf of the Board of Finance without getting approval from the Board of Finance. Because if I put my name down on something and I didn't get approval from the Board of Finance, I'm really technically just speaking on behalf of myself. So the question is, if this board wants me to speak on their behalf, to reach out to NDDH and say, hey, what's going on here? I would feel a heck of a lot better if I had your approval on that.
Rob, man, I agree. I approve with you.
Aaron, this is Jim. Do you think we should have, if you're going to speak with them, do you feel as though we should have a number in mind that we would like to shoot for, say 650 instead of 620, you know, bringing it up 75 cents to say 650. I mean, at least if you go with a number that we can all agree on, that might behoove us to think about that.
This is Amy St. Ange. Can I just speak on one subject in regard to this?
Go ahead, Amy.
So we know that Northeast District Department of Health has had a larger workload due to COVID, but I will state that they have stepped aside from some of their typical roles. We have not seen the Northeast District Department of Health step inside our facility all year. It's been over a year. The last time they were here was December of 2019. And I hear this from other restaurant owners. So although they have a larger workload with COVID, they have focused just on COVID, which means they're not doing their restaurant inspections. And I've heard it from multiple restaurants that they do not see, unless there's a complaint lodged against a restaurant, they do not see them for their normal inspections. So they have been able to adjust. So that means that all the restaurants, all of us who pay hundreds of dollars a year for Northeast District Department of Health to oversee us, we are not seeing them at all. So that's something to keep in mind as you decide on the number that you think you might want to suggest.
I'd like to just add to that too, that, if this amount is going up due to COVID and they're not even, doing what they should have been doing prior to COVID, I definitely want to put this letter out. And I think we should, request even that it stays what it was for 2021, a low ball number of a increase out there, because they're going to come in with something, but essentially, it just doesn't seem reasonable at all to jump to this level, especially hearing that. And eventually the COVID stuff is going to go away. So this number is going to be a permanent number in the budget that's only going to go up from there. So.
Amy,
Rob, man, I agree, Rhonda. And not only that, but it's like Amy says, if some of the other duties that they're not doing, they're not fulfilling their duties doing those things, and they've concentrated all on COVID for the most part. I'm sure that they've also gotten CARE Act money and other money from the federal government possibly to help them with the COVID costs, I'm sure. So I'm sure they've had offset costs there for themselves also.
So Rob, one thing I can tell you is most of the money for COVID has not gone to the health departments. It's been filtered down to the towns and the cities. And in fact, the money that we got in December, which I call the CRF money, the $82,000, one of the instructions was you decide how much you're giving the health department, because we're not giving them anything. So what they have given them is free PPE, and they've given them some level of funds to be able to provide the COVID services and set up the vaccine clinics, et cetera, and the education side of it. But they're not getting the kind of money that I think most towns and cities are getting.
So if I could jump in along those lines, Orla and Rhonda's point, maybe an option in the letter is to offer, suggest a flat rate after a 10% increase last year, and maybe offer a one-time amount out of that 82,000 that would show, cooperation on our part. That's what the funds are for. But yet the high water mark is still 54. We don't start, the jump off point isn't 65 for the years after. So if we can do a one-off thing, Orla, not put it into the actual line item like this, then maybe that would be appealing to them. I mean, they get the money, but they probably, to them, it shouldn't matter how they get it, as long as they get some level of compensation.
Amy, I wonder if I might ask, did the health department make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, they did. In fact, we're like the only town, correct me if I'm wrong, Orla, one of the only towns that actually has them come in to present. So
and this year they got invited to Putnam as well.
Did they explain what's going on and why this is appropriate?
everything that Orla has stated is exactly what we heard. So they're not getting the funds that maybe the towns are getting. So I really do. I have to say I love Rob Wurge's idea. I think that's a great way to present.
I mean, I think as a whole, with any budgetary item that's going up as a result of COVID, we should look at in this fashion rather than just increasing it and then have it continue on forever. Just a thought.
So then coming back to the belt and suspenders approach, I would feel a heck of a lot better if the board were to formalize this through a vote authorizing its chair to negotiate this proposed fee from NDDH on behalf of the board.
I'll second that.
So I was gonna, right, so Steve, if you want to make the motion to authorize me to negotiate to, or at least to explore some kind of compromise with NDDH, are you willing to make that motion?
Absolutely.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
So Steve has the motion and Jim has the second, authorizing the chair to seek some kind of compromise or negotiate something else as compared to what we're seeing here. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, so I'll take that as 6-0 approving.
Aaron, I don't know if you've noticed, there have been a couple of chat comments about the health department. The school has indicated that they've gotten a lot of support over the past year. So something to keep in mind.
And then I see it says NDDH has still been inspecting and reporting to P&Z all inspections of new building septic systems. Good to know. Yeah, but I still would love to see their proposed increase not be what it is.
Or at least explain, why it's appropriate if it is.
Yeah, and if they want to explain it and still not make it as high, then that works too.
That would even be better.
Whenever somebody asks me how much more do you want to pay, I always say nothing. And that may not be a realistic response, but they asked me how much I want to pay, and I always want to pay nothing more than what I do. All right. Any other discussion on public health? All right, we'll move on to library administration. Any discussion here? Any discussion here? Hearing none, we can move on to library.
Aaron, sorry, I have a late question around
Go ahead.
around the impact of COVID. We're showing like 7,000 higher than the current year on a salary line. So did COVID negatively impact us from a current year perspective? About Q54, Orla.
Rob, are you referring to the estimated for fiscal 21?
What I'm referring to is that estimate versus the budget showing a $7,000 climb. I'm asking, is that because COVID it cost us more in the year of COVID? Because I don't think any of us are expecting a full year of COVID type environment next year.
So it actually relates to a couple of different things. One was, I believe, a minimum wage increase. And the other is in relation to estimated for 21 versus budget. That you see there's a decrease of about $3,000 there. That was a hiring. There was a lag time between a hiring person and then they didn't have a staff person for a period of time when somebody left. But the only increases I think.
Sorry, Orla, can you go back because you addressed a few really good things, but I was actually asking the 28402.
Yep.
This is the 292 is showing a $7,000 increase in salaries. Okay. So what would be driving that from COVID year to a non-COVID year?
So I'm just gonna scroll up to the top of the page.
Thank you.
So what we're seeing here is, the Board of Selectmen, proposed 2.5% increase for each of the positions. So the only other increase that might be in there is in relation to somebody who was hired for a position, well, I guess, let me just scroll back down, I'm sorry. The more realistic is the budget number versus the actual number for fiscal 21, because fiscal 21 is likely to be less than budget. So in fact, the increase in budget is really only $3,000 here. And that represents primarily the 2.5% increase.
For all the hours and days they were closed, the salaries went down nothing practically? Wow,
No, they were fully paid when they were closed. The
Right.
staff were working from home.
really?
Steve, this is Amy St. Ange. That was a Board of Trustees decision to continue to pay the staff while the library was closed. That was all on the Board of Trustees.
Question regarding that. Was there federal money that came in to compensate for those salaries? No.
They paid them because it was in the budget. And additionally, the library had actually requested a 3% pay increase this year, and the Board of Finance did drop, I mean, the Board of Selectmen did drop it to 2.5. It's
Is the
not,
library,
but the Board of Trustees had asked for a 3% increase.
is the library fully open?
It is now.
Silly question. If the people had been furloughed, they probably would have been more on unemployment and we would have paid less.
I believe that we cover, Orla, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we actually self-insure with our unemployment, so we would have had to pay the unemployment amount as well. I mean, maybe.
Not the $600 a week from the federal government, I don't think.
Well, no.
We got it. Yes, that was, we did pay out, I think there's been a discussion already, maybe we haven't made it this far, but the unemployment insurance, we did have to pay upfront the $600, and then we ended up getting credits back from the state with regards to that. But
Okay.
we would have had to pay the other unemployment benefit because we would not have got it back. But just so you know, Steve, that was the same with all of the departments, with regards to,
Sure.
each department was fully paid. Each person got paid if they were typically scheduled to work.
That is correct. I'm glad you brought that up, Orla. The town hall had taken a couple weeks where we rotated staff, so we weren't all together in the building all the time. So,
Yeah.
and
so
they
we
got
pretty much
they got
did-
paid as well. And then we brought everybody back after about a month of rotating.
But Amy, isn't it also correct that those that were not in the town hall, some of them were working, being paid?
Yeah,
even
some
though
people were working from home, correct?
Some of them were home, some of them were home, and some of them were working from home. Not everybody
We had-
worked. If your job
had-
required you to fix a truck and you can't work on the truck, then that's different than if you were working remotely. Not all job functions and skills could be remote.
Correct.
So are the library functions, were they actually working from home, or were they more or less just home because the library was closed?
I believe they were
I
working. from
can't
home,
answer that.
right? I think all of them were remote. Is Allison on the call?
I
No.
don't believe that she is.
She is?
I don't believe she is.
Oh, okay.
If others are okay, I'd be open to coming back to this as one of those place marks.
I'll agree with that.
Hey, we can have her come on the call next week. We can start with that if you wish.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, because what time is it now?
8:53.
I'll second that, Rhonda.
I didn't put a motion out there.
Steve, I like the way you think, man. Do we have time to cover, I mean, any other discussion on library administration? It sounds like we're good with that one because we're gonna have Allison come in next week, right?
Correct.
Any chance we could discuss library / Lewis P. Fosher Community Center building before we conclude for the evening? And I don't know if Allison can speak to this as well. Maybe while we have her on next week, we can cover this. If anybody wants to cover this in greater detail.
Aaron, I would just comment here that it's nice to see one of the line items go of electricity, offsetting some of these increases. This is a case where maybe the hours or the rate is going up, almost $700, but yet they found other areas to help with the impact of that. And the net result is down. So that's great job. I'd like to see more of that.
Mhm.
It sure would be nice to see the estimate revised to be hopefully a better estimate for the current year. It's a minor item, but the sewer charges caught my eye as very strange kind of numbers.
Any other?
Aaron, can I make a comment? We're coming to the end of the night. I just was going back and forth with Renee with regards to dates and ensuring that we have a budget in place. It looks like we really need to get this finalized by the 15th. And the reason why I mention is in case you want to consider having some additional meetings.
And so can you help us walk through the timetable on the 15th? What is it about because I know typically in the past, the end of April was kind of what we had shot for. So can you walk us through the
Sure.
date steps on the 15th?
So I think it was 2 years ago, we changed the ordinance, which basically brought the town meeting forward to the first Monday in May. So depending on what day of the week that ends up on or what date, this year, the first Monday in May is the 2nd of May. So it's pretty early.
Or the 3rd, yeah. It looks like it's Saturday is the 1st, so the 3rd.
3rd, yeah, sorry.
Still, yeah, I mean, that's 1 day difference.
Yeah. So that basically I was just reading back over Renee's. Okay, so we'd have to get the legal notice in by the 20. I'm sorry, I'm just reading a text. Her suggestion was to get it done by the 15th. Okay, so we would have to hold the referendum 7 to 14 days after the town meeting. However, we're required to post the legal notice 30 days in advance of the referendum. So based on her dates that she's looking at, it looks like we really would have to try and push to get this finished by the week of the 15th of April.
And so then I guess my
We're
question.
going to look at it again tomorrow, Aaron.
Great.
But I just want
Okay,
to
yeah, please
keep
check.
that in mind. Maybe you want to discuss with your board, pushing in some additional meetings, maybe on some other days of the week.
So then I guess my question, and maybe this can be answered now and maybe it won't be answered until tomorrow, but do we necessarily have to have the referendum on, May 15th or whatever it may be? You said we had to do 30 days before referendum. Is there anything that would prevent us from, if the town meeting is May 3rd, is there anything that would prevent us from having the referendum on, say, May 22nd, thus giving us another week so that we have 3 more budget workshops instead of 2?
Well, we are required to have the referendum at the most 14 days after the town meeting. And based on what date we're looking at here, the town meeting's on the 3rd. The latest we can have the referendum is the 17th of May.
17th of May.
17th of May.
And so this May 3rd thing, this is our ordinance that the town of Thompson put in a few years ago?
Yes.
And there's no way for us to get around this?
No.
Okay. I think I recall last year we were meeting every Tuesday and Thursday at one point.
That is correct.
That was, we were playing catch up last year because after the COVID delay, where we didn't have a number of meetings for the majority of the month of March, we were playing catch up. And if I remember, you're right, we had them Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Mhm.
I know we do have some, I know the Board of Selectmen will be meeting on Tuesdays too, but there might be other Tuesdays that we can take advantage of. Amy, when are your Tuesday meetings during the month of April?
We have one coming up on the 6th. It's a pretty light meeting. I think that my board could be out of the meeting within an hour. So we'd be a little late joining. You could certainly feel free to move forward and do a meeting anyways, and we could join in. So, and then we have a break the week after that. I think the week after that, then the 13th, we would have I think I have an inlands wetlands meeting typically on a Tuesday.
My calendar is available for 7 p.m. April 6th and 7 p.m. April 13th. If we want to do, basically take two slots and turn it into 4 slots between now and the 15th. How's everybody else for meeting Tuesday, Thursday for the next 2 weeks?
I can do that.
I can do that.
I can do it.
I can do it also.
So I just want to say Melinda Smith posted, Erin, did you see that? She posted in the chat. Okay.
I did. And I guess the problem from our end is that we, by ordinance, have to get this, we have to have this town meeting on May 3rd.
So maybe just keep that in mind when you do discuss the Board of Ed potentially, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Melinda would still be available on Thursdays. It's just the Tuesday meeting that. So I think she should have plenty of time to go over things.
And she's saying they stayed away from Thursdays.
Okay, great.
That's kind of what I was figuring.
Okay.
So then let's set a goal of, at the next budget workshop of April 6th, let's try to get the town side done in terms of all this fact finding and discussing and understanding and all that stuff. Let's get that done. So then we can focus on the education side, because my sense is April 13 and 15, my comments that I made earlier this evening about a mill and a half is probably not going to go. Those are just my personal comments. They don't reflect anybody else on the Board of Finance. But if anybody else happens to share my view on that, then that means we would have 2 meetings, the 13th and the 15th, to make adjustments and then put something out.
Aaron, if I could suggest too, I just did a quick look ahead, right? We have the rec department's rather sizable, but there's a number of much smaller departments coming up.
Yep.
Maybe on Tuesday, we could try to target 30 to 45 minutes on the balance of the departments, and that'll leave us a solid hour to an hour and 15 minutes to talk about capital.
Yes.
Just try to divide that meeting just so we don't lose track of the full 2 hours. And that's not to rush people, but just that might be a goal for us to try to get into capital by 7:45-ish.
It's a good goal.
Yeah, because I think most of the money's going to be in there's a lot of money in capital.
That's right.
It's a big one.
Absolutely.
That'll give us a good solid bucket of time for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Rob.
Yep. Then we'll target the school on Thursday, right? And then that leaves us another Tuesday, Thursday, Aaron, the following week. So
Correct.
I think that sounds really like a wise thing to do. Pick up that Tuesday, or both of them, but start next Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Sounds good.
Well, I'm noticing that it's 9:03. Who wants to make a motion to adjourn?
Aaron?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. I just want to make sure I have the right people. So you're going to get through all of the rest of the 5s and the 6s? Is that what the plan is next week on Tuesday?
What's the 5s and the 6s?
Oh, I'm sorry, departments beginning with number 5. And
Yeah.
beginning with number 6.
What I'd like to do is, on Tuesday,
Yes.
get through the town side.
Okay, I'll make sure
Yeah.
everybody's there.
Get through town operating and capital improvement plan. Just get completely through it. So that way Thursday, we can talk about school.
Okay,
And
perfect.
then the following Tuesday and following Thursday, we can make whatever adjustments we feel we want to make. And I noticed that that following Thursday, April 15th, is the night that's the night of a regular meeting. And I'm wondering, and I'm thinking maybe that's where we have some flexibility if we could push off regular business until, say, the following Thursday, the 22nd. That would give us a full night of the 15th to do budget workshop. And the reason I suggest maybe some flexibility of pushing that back, or maybe just not having a regular meeting, is because I know sometimes in the summer when things are really slow, like in August, we won't have a meeting at all. So it's not like there's no legal precedent for either not having a meeting or moving a meeting or whatever. So I'll ask town attorney to weigh in on that, but we could always have a special meeting on the 22nd. I hope I'm not speaking inconsistent with whatever ordinance or state law or whatever, but I know that we've been, the years where we take it off in the summer, that means we're not following the table, we're not following the schedule, and nobody's calling us out on it. So there's got to be some flexibility in there.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Aaron.
If we do, Aaron, could we ask for still have the monthly report? I think it'd be good to see the March close.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Even if we don't go over it in the meeting, just to have it emailed to us, Orla, I would find that very helpful.
Yes.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I'll get that to you guys as soon as possible, okay?
The rest of you, Orla. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
Wait, so Jim, you got the motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rhonda's got the second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed?